Hi, in this video I'm going to go over using the Pythagorean theorem. I once had a professor tell me that if a student knows the Pythagorean theorem and everything around it, they could pass at least the math part of the SATs with a 90% at least. So, I mean, that's an A. Just by knowing this one thing. So, what is the Pythagorean theorem? If you haven't heard of it, it's this relationship between the lengths of the sides of a right triangle. It has to be a right triangle, not obtuse, not acute. That's a right triangle, which means this is a 90-degree angle. That little box is what that indicates. And C is always the hypotenuse. A and B could be either one of these sides, but in the textbook that I use, the A is always on the bottom. So we'll just go with that for now. The horizontal line is A. But the hypotenuse, the line that is opposite the 90-degree angle, that is always C. That is very important that you get the order correct. Because if we were to move things around, it would be A squared plus B squared minus C squared equals 0. See, if we subtract C squared from both sides, we would get that. And in subtraction, we know that order matters. So it's very important that we remember which one is the C side. C side. Anyway, here we have an example, and they want us to find this side. Okay, well, let's just call that one A, as I just wrote A equals question mark. And this should be our B, right? Because it's not opposite the right angle. It's not the hypotenuse. So that's 4 squared equals C squared, which is 12. 12 squared. So now we just solve for A, right? 4 squared is 16. 12 squared is 144, right? Yeah, I hope so. Subtract 16 from both sides because we're trying to get A squared by itself. I'm trying to get A by itself, but one step at a time. 144 minus 16. 14 minus 6. 8. 3 minus 1 is 2. 128. Okay. Square root of both sides, right? Now, normally when you square root both sides, we would say plus or minus, but we're talking distance here, right? Like, think of this as 4 inches, 12 inches. We can't have negative inches. So we're only going to have one positive answer this time. Remember that. This is distance, but there's another thing called displacement, and that can be negative, but that's for physics students. Square root of 128. And there's some perfect squares in that. Well, yeah, we need to rationalize that, because if you answer square root of 128 as your answer, you would be marked wrong, or at least half your points would be deducted, because rationalizing that, or simplifying the radical, I should say, is very important. We need to know precisely what number we're dealing with here. So 128. Well, I know it's an even number, so might as well divide it by 2. 2 goes into 12 6 times. So 2 times 60, and 2 goes into 8 4 times. Okay, 2 times 64. That can also be divided by 2, so wait a minute, no. 64 is a perfect square, is it not? 64 is a perfect square, right? So, what's the square root of 64? 8. And we have square root of 2 left. So, our missing side is 8 square root of 2 inches, or whatever units that you use here. Okay. All right, one more example. Say we're given a problem. They say A equals 4 inches, B equals 3 inches of a right triangle. What is the hypotenuse? Okay, well, A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So 4 squared plus 3 squared equals C squared. 4 squared, 16. 3 squared is 9 equals C squared. 16 plus 9 is 25. C squared. We don't have C by itself. We got to square root both sides, right? Only the positive part of it. 25 is nice, perfect square. So C equals 5. 5 what? 5 inches. Got to remember the units.